Welcome to Fearless Females, where ambition meets resilience. Meet your guide, Lorie Jones, president of Fidelis Wealth Advisors. Join her and remarkable women executives as they uncover the triumphs and transformative moments shaping extraordinary careers. Ready to be fearless? Let the journey begin.
Good morning, Fearless Females. I'm so excited you've decided to join us again. I always get excited when we have listeners. That is the best part of what we do. So today we have Umadevi. Now, I think that you guys are going to love her story. Her journey is so unique. She was born in Singapore, and she just has worked so many diverse countries and places. In fact, after I got done interviewing her, I asked if we could meet for lunch because I had so many more questions that I wanted to ask and so much more that I wanted to learn from her. So I really think you're going to like this, and I can't wait to get started. Good morning. So we are here with Uma Gopaldass.
That's nice.
You know what? Uma, go ahead and tell me what your name is one more time.
Okay, so the full name is Umadevi Gopaldass.
So we're just going to talk to Uma today. She is the board governance expert, and she works mostly in the alternative energy space, the green energy. And I'm super excited to just hear about your journey today. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'm really excited to get started.
Well, thank you for having me. And I would like to acknowledge that you're doing this Fearless Female podcast. I'm absolutely happy that someone's doing it. Thank you.
Oh, good. So the very first question, Uma, is always my favorite. I love reading. What is your favorite book?
A lot of people are kind of different. I know my best friend reads books like she's drinking water. I'm not one of those. I think I burnt out in school in Asia. I'm from Singapore, reading a lot of textbooks. So I'm not a person who enjoys reading books. And I read a lot of text for work, so a lot of corporate work. But I do have to say there's one book, I actually have it on hand here. This was given to be my godmother who passed away soon after she gave me this book. It's called The Prophet. A lot of people know it's a collection of poems by Khalil Gibran.
Oh.
It came, I think it was quite in early stages of like 1940s or something like that. It was first published poetry. And this really has helped me through my life stages. And my godmother, she was diagnosed with cancer, and she picked up this book and passed it to me when I was going through some tough times. So that's one of my favorite books. I mean, this is if you need a poetry book, and I'm very into artistic stuff, so this was my favorite book. Other than that, there's so many out there, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot. And I like that you kind of have trended towards, like, you can only read so many how-tos and, do this and the white papers. Oh, my goodness, for these securities investment. I just read them when I want to go to sleep, basically.
I do too.
So I love that you brought something that's creative and has that sense of just being beautiful.
I have strategically placed a lot of self-help books everywhere in the house, near the bathroom, near everywhere where I might have some attention span. They're still sitting there collecting dust.
I love it.
I tried.
So I do a book club for my kids. And the way I do this book club is I just decide what book we're reading and send it to all of my children. And then when I get on the phone with them, I'm like, so how'd you like our book? And I think they're still sitting there next to the bathroom gathering dust most of them too. So.
I love it. I mean, it's good to start them young, though. Like my best friend started young with Nancy Drews and all of that stuff, right? And,
yeah.
And my godson, which is her kid, is about 11, and he reads. He was reading since he was like 7 or 6. So, he reads piles, and now he reads airplane books. So, how do you build an airplane, kind of stuff. So, yeah, I'm not one of those.
Well, tell me a little bit about your journey, Uma. How did you get where you're at today? Kind of what do you do? Just let us learn a little bit about you.
Yeah, so I come from Singapore. Singapore now, everyone knows it as this bling society, rich, green, clean, fun. the country that has that boat-like ship on top of the three hotels, the famous ones, the infinity pool and all that. But Singapore wasn't like that all the time. I grew up in 1970s. I was born 1974. It was back in the days, fresh out of its colonization, about 14 years, and we had a lot of growing up to do. So poverty was huge. I come from an extremely poor family, but I'm extremely lucky and grateful for being born in Singapore, because the country itself recognized that it was a limited population, very small population, small island. In order for us to survive, all of us, including the women population, the diverse population, regardless of language, race, or creed, had to work. So we were all working our tuition. I never saw my parents. We were latchkey kids. But education was number one for Singapore. So we were highly educated regardless of our background. The government forced us all into education. We got our degree from the National University of Singapore. At that time, I was becoming famous for procurement and logistics. At that time, it was like supply chain was a new word. It was like, ooh. So I majored in operations management, finance, and procurement and logistics. So kind of like triple majored.
You just said three of my favorite things.
I'm glad. It was like, oh man. But I was already working in junior colleges, which is high school here in US. It's the British system in Singapore. One of my close friends' aunt was working for a company called Schlumberger. It's a big oil drilling company. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was the competition of Halliburton. They were huge in Singapore and Asia Pacific for oil drilling, oil services and all that. And we were called in to do filing jobs, and we were getting paid like $50 a day. And back in the days, that was huge, right?
Oh, yeah.
So they saw something in me, and I continued working and studying. I almost lost my mind. By the age of 20, I graduated, but they paid for my education in university. Mm-hmm. And I took a 1-month break in Thailand, and then I was shipped off to Indonesia to live there for 6 years.
Wow.
In between, I just left home like 20. I was like, in the middle of the boonies, remote places on offshore oil rigs, and it was a huge adventure. And then I was moving around Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia. We had the whole region. So Australia, Perth, Karata was extraordinary amount of knowledge building in a very youthful young age. Uh-huh. Comes with its darkness as well, because you're in an oil field region with a lot of good and bad. You see a lot of things. You see human side of it, the lightness and the darkness. And it's not going into too much detail, but 16 years I was in Schlumberger. I came back offshore, worked in Singapore, did a bit of my own startup companies. And then from big oil, I moved into big consulting, which was Accenture. And that was after I retired myself from oil and gas. I had 16 years. I couldn't keep moving to Dubai, to Laos. I was like in Texas, Sugarland at one point. And then I was like in Nigeria, Dubai, Jebel Ali. And then I was in Norway, North Sea suddenly, Great momentum, but great trips. But you don't know where you are at any point of time.
You wake up and you're like, what city am I in? What country am I in?
Oh, yeah, not only that, you also have to keep saying goodbye to relationships you build, to furnitures you pick up, to homes you try to build. So it was a very touch and go life for a long time. Mm-hmm. And then I decided, no, it's after 16 years, you can remove yourself from that by retrenching yourself. So I had a Middle East Asia Pacific role for supply chain based in Singapore. I moved the entire headquarters to Jebel Ali, Dubai, where it was 0% tax. So we moved a lot of the procurement arm there. Mm-hmm. And then I put my successor there to manage it, and retired myself. Took my money out. So that's another lesson. Don't ever leave the money on the table. Take your retrenchment money. It's no problem getting retrenched. There's a lot of opportunities there. Yeah. And then I was camped out in Indonesia, Bali, like with lots of this money. I'm going, what's next? And then Accenture comes knocking and saying, hey, we are building our Asia Pacific practice for consulting, and we think your natural resources background would be amazing. Would you want to join? So I joined them, and that 3-year ride with them and their bonuses and all that sign-on bonuses was fantastic. Great ride. It was like a fast-paced MBA program with practical application because it's consulting, management consulting.
Yeah.
And that's when I met Newman, meaning one of my clients, which was based in Elko, Nevada and Colorado. So here I am during the subprime crisis. Gold goes up through the roof, which is inversely correlated, right?
Right.
So Accenture gets a project here in US, but they had already retrenched quite a bunch of the Accenture folks in natural resources. So here I am getting shipped from Singapore to Elko, Nevada to do a 3-month project. I fall in love with Elko, Nevada. I don't know, nobody knows where it is except for I-80 belt.
Yeah.
And so I'm just putting out into the universe that I would love to move here. Lo and behold, the partner of Accenture, 3 months later, after all the project is over, she moves to work for Accenture and calls me up and says, when I'm back in Singapore, she's like, you said you loved Elko. Would you like to move there permanently? And I'm like, okay, everything's kind of aligning. I had a chat with my mom, say, if you don't want me to go, I won't go. And she's like, let's not kid ourselves. You were never meant to be with me. You're supposed to be far and having your own journey. And so I picked up and left in 2010, September, and I've been in US ever since. And Colorado was the headquarters for Newman, so I moved here. 7 years later, all this journey culminated into it. I always had it in my heart that I was going to start my own company. Mm-hmm. I just didn't want to do the mainstream consulting, mainstream advisory. So I had a knack for governance. I had a knack for doing the right thing in the most toughest of times and guiding leadership to do the same thing. Like, yes, profit, yes, capital markets are motivated by profits, but doesn't necessarily need to do so. We might have to flip the equation. Yeah. Maybe more people, more planet, and the profit would come. And so I realized, I'm going to start that kind of company called Leading Lotus. So lead above the bulk of all this mess, from your own soul. You feel like, okay, I'm motivated by what the company is telling me to do, but how do I do it well and with my moral values intact? Mm-hmm. That was a journey that started in 2017. February was a Valentine's Day company. After a long up and down ride, I got into the board governance game in 2020, led by COVID. You just make those decisions. Yeah, you know what? I need to be in the boardroom. And ever since then, I've been in the boardroom. So it just culminated. I always say that my whole career has been a natural flow of beyond imagination. And I would never, and I could not say no matter how uncomfortable, scary, unknown the journey was. I always took the fork that was crazy. It was like, oh, you can go this fork, which is business as usual. You'll make more money, blah, blah, blah. Let's go this way. You may not make more money, but it might be something else. Yeah.
And so you always were a little bit risky. Took the riskier path. I'm
a risk averse person, but I always never said no. I think that's maybe I have FOMO. Who the hell knows? But yeah, it was crazy. I've never said no.
So I'm curious. This is just me being a little curious. Like you always hear school in China, like you hear yes. They go to school from morning till night, every day of the week, every day of the year. Like is that really what happens or do you?
Yes. Yeah, it still happens in Singapore, Asia, all over the place. Our Asian parents, we get it. They worked themselves to the ground. So in order for us to have a good life, the minimum we can do is study till we die. So it was like that. I would study from morning to evening, and then we had tuition on top of that. And it was like many different tuition, English, second language, math, science. Yes. And you lose your life. We didn't actually have sports that much. Sports was like your hobby, but it was a lot of studying, which is where I think I burnt out on reading. I would plagiarize and memorize, not plagiarize, but just memorize word for word. Yeah. I remembered historic facts that didn't make sense anymore. Yeah. So it was, it is. And I've I'm not saying it's the right strategy either, because I've no classmates who've committed suicide because they thought they were disappointing their parents. They were poor background and just couldn't take the steam, even though they got A's, all A's.
Yeah.
They just couldn't do it anymore. So it's a sad situation.
Yeah, that's hard, but you do come out of it with a great deal of knowledge in a short amount of time, or a shorter amount of time. So I guess we'll let others debate the politics of it. I was just curious as to the actual mechanics.
I think it's a society, because we accept it. And so the whole society encourages it. So we're not really like studying, but there's no nurturing. There's a lot of nurturing in between. So I think that's the grit and resilience that we built into it.
Oh, that's good. The other thing you said that I thought was really interesting is this idea of being ethical, still making money, still looking at profit in the bottom line, but also looking at, am I doing it in a way that makes the world better? Or so, at finance, I got to tell you, finance usually does not come with the best reputation.
Poor guys. I mean,
yeah. So, but I do think that like our practice specifically, we've set up a really value-driven based practice, and we are doing finance in a way that makes the world better, not worse. And I love that idea of like bringing that to the boardroom.
Yes. Yeah. So I dug black gold oil. I dug gold, and now I'm digging my soul out of the ground. Because it did feel that way. I spoke about being dark. It's like you're in the environment doing stuff. You're in the community doing stuff. You're in the native land and doing stuff. And all over the world, right? It's not only in US. I was in Middle East. I was in Africa. I was in Indonesia, all over the world. South America a bit. Today I'm digging green gold, right? So green energy and all that. So I'm giving back because I have accumulated the knowledge and the science behind it. I can speak to what is going on factually and unbiased. It's not you against me, I against you. It's not the petroleum against fossil against whatever. There's solutions out here today, even with the fossil fuel companies, petroleum companies. Even with Saudi Arabians on the 2030 vision, there are a lot of solutions coming up on the way to reduce dependence on fossil fuel. It's not like it's not happening. I think a lot of the worrisome narrative is the words being thrown out, the words being used today. ESG is really a bad word to use. I've described it out from my speeches. But, you don't need to label stuff. ESG has been going around since the 80s, since I've been around in oil and gas. We just called it differently. We called it HSE, Health, Safety, Environment. And so I think we need to get back to a mission, to values, versus politicizing, if that's a word, the worry about the people and the planet, more so than the profit. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, like you said, finance can drive it. It's not like outside of finance.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that corporations are kind of coming to that understanding as well, that they are trying to, they understand that there's a lot of different opinions, and especially this younger generation, they really do focus on having, it's great that you make a whole bunch of stuff, but is it sustainable? Like what are my kids going to see in this space? And so I think there's a push for that kind of, which is great, because our companies should be looking at more sustainable business practices all around, not just oil and gas or finance or anything like that.
Yeah, traditional, I would call it traditional industries. So there are a lot of researchers now from Harvard's and, if you will, MIT's, that sustainably driven companies drive more returns on investment than the ones that are chugging along traditionally. More so than 3 times more than 3 times, 4 times, 10 times more than a traditional industrial company that has not jumped into the bandwagon. Mm-hmm. So those researchers are showing that there's more money if you invest in a company that is doing it right.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, exactly. I've read some of that research before I go to sleep. That puts me to sleep, right? No, I'm not. I'm lying.
But it gives you good dreams.
Yeah, there you go. So tell me, Uma, what's the best investment you've made in yourself? Is there something you can look back on and say, oh, I'm so glad I did that because it really did change the way my life has gone?
I think as for the younger generation, especially as a girl growing up, there's a lot of noise on how you should look, what you should wear, what is pretty, who will you attract, and who would you get likes from, and navigate the business world, your career, your personal life. I think the best thing I invested in is my brains, is in my wisdom, is in my energy to be positive, is my energy to get over emotional distress or psychological distress or the past, and that's always some things that hold you back. So imposter syndrome, if you will. So I would encourage everyone to just always invest in your soul, your spirituality. Yeah, you can always look good. You can always do your hair, buy more makeup. That always helps. But I'm 50 in October. I can't reverse the time on my face. It's gonna happen. But I can build more brain cells. I can live healthy. So health is number one. Invest in your health. Eat, live, grow naturally, happily, spiritually, in a way that is going to make you feel proud, regardless of how you look. And that's my best advice I could give out there.
I like that, because we are a lot of times, especially as women, focused into looking a certain way, or, and I think that a lot of times those more important aspects, like our health or our happiness, get forgotten because we are not exactly the right size or exactly the right shape or whatever that we think we should be. So I think that's really valuable.
Awesome. Yeah, and I would like to add that we have a lot more research in the last 3-5 years that women after 40, we are already down in our estrogen levels. We are already in perimenopause to menopause, and ethnic Indian, we menopause quite early, 46 to 49. That means our hormones are all over the place and our bodies are reacting really crazy. So we're not out of our minds while we're navigating this extra bit of, family, juggling businesses, wanting to lead and all of that. So we got to give ourselves some slack and be proud of ourselves, be grateful for what we have, and just enjoy life, I would say.
Practice some self-care.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Uma, have you ever gotten really bad advice? Like, what's the worst advice someone gave you? And did you take it, or did you not take it? Did you learn from it?
Bad advice.
Okay.
That's really tough. I come from Asia where everybody kind of doesn't give advice, but more like a nod or a disapproving look or one of those things. But I have to say, I don't remember anything that's negative, but I only remember and be grateful for things. Like every decision I've made, I've had my two big brothers who are a biggest fan of me. I love them. Growing up with two big brothers, they set me up for success because they never looked at me as the girl. They looked at me as their equal and that I could career-wise do anything I want to, lead, start a company. So there was none of that. And so I was already set up for success by just being born into the right mindset or frame. I had a lot of godparents, growing up on the streets of Singapore. So I think the diversity of advisors, mentors, godparents, I call them godparents, they're just angels, fairy god people around, just guiding me naturally was the biggest thing. I think there was not bad advice, but bad imposition of someone's opinion about who I was. And that's always the glass ceiling, right? That's what glass ceiling is. Like, you're not good enough, or your performance rating is lacking because of this. You might be a bit more aggressive than a typical male for doing the same amount, if not a job that's, above and beyond. Otherwise, you're doing a great job above and beyond, but you're coming off too strong. And I was like, okay, I said exactly the same thing in this body, in this language, and I come off strong. So it's not so much advice, I would say. It's like opinions. And I never take opinions. I know myself a lot.
Very confident in what you are doing, so you kind of go with your gut or your whatever inside of you is telling you to do that. You work with that. So did you temper your aggressiveness?
It's funny because I didn't do anything except make the company a lot more successful. Company successful. So I had to, one of my mentors or godfathers or mentors told me, like, you have to ride the game and you have to stay under the radar. That was the advice, while producing great work, better than normal work, above and beyond work. And even though you're achieving that, lay low. That was, and so I took it because I knew that that was just a short stint. We talked about the token women, actually Michelle Ashby, who's our contact, she just wrote an article about the tokenism and the women in their roles, and that we shouldn't shy away from being that token women because we should go in and change from inside. And so I think I produced so much value from within that when I left, the hurt was on their side, not so much on my side. And so when you step away, you make sure you're stepping on a higher platform, on a higher rock, and a higher self than you were on that side. So, yeah, I didn't temper myself. I just wrote it out until I could turn around and say, I told you so. And it worked most of the time.
That's great. That's great. What about looking back through your journey? Is there any situation that you're like, oh, if I know then what I know now, I definitely would have done that differently?
In my career, it's all okay. There's no regrets at all. It's like, The only thing is, I wish I had known about corporate America culture, which was a culture shock. I've worked with big oil and gas companies. Schlumberger was a European company, it was incorporated in The Hague, so it didn't really have a nationality, even though it was French origin. Accenture in Singapore was great, it was in Asia Pacific, and I traveled around, and clients were Nestle and Europe, and been all around the world where it should be dangerous or racist or sexist for women. Africa, Middle East, Saudi. Yet I didn't feel any shock and any threats there as I felt in US.
Really?
Isn't that surprising? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So corporate America was a whole different. So I think the thing about cultures across the world, and I've lived in a lot of these places, was it's direct. It's at you, right? They're like, oh, you're a woman. You're like, okay, see what I can do. And then they pipe down, they go, okay, you're good. Right? So you can nail it. I think with the American context of corporate America, and I'm going to get a lot of pushback from this, is you don't know you're in a game. You're doing the work, and then you're like, what is going on? Why can't I get that gig? Why can't I get the popularity? Why can't I get fame? Do I have to have something in the background that says I'm an Ivy League, or I'm a trust fund baby, or I have something? My social background and where I came from, I think I was a mystery to a lot of people in the companies I worked in US for. It's like they don't know you, so they are afraid to know you and invest in you. So you're going to invest in yourself. Whereas in Asia and Europe, when you talk to a few people or talk to leaders, they like you. And you do good work, they like you. Even better, and they'll give you the roles. They'll be like, you're my prodigy, go do this. And that's how I ended up in oil and gas in the first place. They threw me in the middle of the sea at the age of 20 as operations director of Indonesia, and then as a technical advisor, and then as a management consultant. And then I was a VP in Indonesia at the age of 25. I had 100 over people working for me. And I couldn't say no. I was like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm like, go figure it out. That's not the game that you play in US. And I might be biased because it's only my opinion, and maybe it's what I felt.
Right.
But it's a culture shock for me. It was a culture shock. I still don't know how you navigate corporate lifestyle as a female, as a diverse female, as a young diverse female. But I am now in a place where being in the boardroom has given me so much perspective on how to support the management teams, the executive teams, what they're going through, have empathy for them. So it's really shifted for me being in the boardrooms.
and maybe help out with some of the practices that are causing the situations that you found when you were in corporate America?
Yeah, and a lot of the companies I sit in the boardroom of are already set up for success in that way. So the CEOs are amazing. They believe in diversity. They believe in the female power, the feminine power, the masculine power, because they are in a very difficult industry to do energy transition, to do impact investment. These are not easy things that we're trying to do. So the CEOs have, and the management themselves have a culture of breaking traditions and going towards a different progress in the world. So I think that's what's different for me is I'm now pursuing to be in industries that are difficult to move, but at the same time, the rewards are so awesome. In fact, it's more beneficial than monetary growth, right? And so I think I've learned that it's helping me deal with the corporate culture for the other generation.
Yeah.
And it's also breaking those corporate mindsets of this is how these roles should be set. And this is how you should be promoted. And these are the things you have to do to get promoted and seen and da.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Ashley actually said that as we were chatting kind of before our interview. It's just, she said, you can make real change in the boardrooms of these companies. You can make real change for employees, make real change in lives and real change for women going through these situations. So maybe they don't deal with the same situation that you did.
Yeah, absolutely. She nailed it. I love what Ashley said. I wish I was I'm going to listen to that podcast now.
What about now? This is so interesting to me that at 20 years old, they dropped you off in the middle of an oil field somewhere. I just can't even.
I started at 16 though.
Oh my goodness gracious. So what would you go back and tell that 20-year-old you? Is there some advice you would give her?
My 20-year-old? Oh, wow. I would. There is one thing if I could go back and tell her, it would be to never second guess who you are. Never worry about feeling like an imposter. Like you've got it. You have the ability to be in any room, in any table. I've been told today by really powerful people that I belong in the board of Citibank, for example. And I'm like, okay, well, are they moving something in terms of impact? So... and back in the days, you would second guess my value. So no, don't, you are valuable.
Is there a trick or a tactic or something you can do to help yourself realize that? Because you can, like I am, those affirmations, you look in the mirror, I am good, yeah. I am wonderful, I am beautiful. Like they only go so far sometimes when you're getting messages from outside telling you,
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of neuroscience to this now on how you manifest stuff. I feel like I've manifested a lot of these things, like to live in Elko and all in the wild, wild west, have all of that rugged lifestyle. And, I would say neuroscience says you got to believe, you got to trust and believe. And every day, there are a lot of things you can do. Gratitude, show gratitude, write a gratitude journal, meet people authentically. And I used to meet people not liking people very much. I don't know. I'm not much of a people person. Maybe I'm an introvert. Not many people know that I'm an introvert because I'm out there a lot. But I think today I genuinely am interested in getting to know people so that I'm not worried about getting hurt by people, right? We go through a lot of our lives getting hurt. And then putting ourselves caged up in our shell, building a wall around our hearts, personally and professionally. I think I would really say, make sure you believe in yourself, no matter what anyone says. No one else can break you down like you do.
Oh, yeah.
If you end up building the negative stuff, yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I like that thought too. Just like, no one else can make you feel as bad as you can make yourself feel. So you got to believe and using those tactics to kind of manifest your future, believing in yourself. Maybe just as simple as looking in the mirror and saying, you are kind, you're wonderful, you're beautiful.
Well, the other thing is having people who really genuinely love you for who you are and being there to support you when you have those days where you're like, what am I doing here? When you're on the shaky ground, you have all the support network, girlfriends, relatives, mom and dads, and, brothers, sisters, whoever, mentors, teachers, coaches. I had a lot of them. And their belief in me was astounding. So there was no room for failure because their belief was like, you can never fail in our eyes. It's like, okay.
I love that. My daughter does a little bit of that for me. She'd come in and sit down on my bed.
Right.
She's only 18, 19 years old. And she's like, you are really cool, Mom. Wow, what you're doing is really neat. So
I want to adopt her. Like, please share your daughter.
Yeah. So what scared you the most when you started on your journey? Uma, was there anything that you were like, and are you still scared of that, or did you figure out how to handle it?
The fear of failure. I don't know what that means. I mean, like, what is failure, right?
Yeah.
So as women, we are perfectionists. We want to make sure whatever job or task we are given, roles we're given, we ace it till we run ourselves to the ground. We overwork ourselves. That's, I'm generalizing, but
yeah,
we do tend to do a lot more than we are given to do. I think that the fear of failure still always is at the back. Like, even when I sit in the boardrooms of these companies, they're super awesome companies. I want them to succeed. It's not so much me. I'm in the background. So I'm doing everything in my power to empower these companies, the CEOs, the managements, their teams, and get them everything that they need to make sure they accomplish their missions, their goals, and all of that stuff. And that's something I've learned to navigate, is when I feel like I'm not doing enough, I try to amplify it by saying more, doing more. Today, I'm like, no, I'm going to do more quality and the right amount of guidance and wisdom. And I call it the CEO whisperer. Then overdo things just out of my fear. Because sometimes you don't have to say a lot to make things better.
That's really insightful because I do find myself, whenever I'm in a transition, especially like going from doing the things to managing the things, I always feel like that I'm not doing things. I need to fill up my day. I need to do more things. Then I need to find something else to do. And I think that it is more important to kind of look and say, am I doing the right things and in the right way at the right time, rather than just more?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you don't really have to, like, some of us in the bottom want to have to say a lot of things because we want to feel like we are producing some value, and in fact, I do the opposite so much that one of my CEO actually called me up and said, I need you to speak up more because you have such interesting, wise, words whenever you speak. And I'm like, well, I just thought that everybody else nailed it. All the dudes nailed it. So there was nothing additional I needed to say on top of that. So he was more worried for me than I was.
Oh, that's so funny.
Oh, that was super awesome.
What about, I cannot imagine that this answer is no, but did you face any unique challenges because you were a woman? And how did you navigate those?
Yeah, that's all you face as challenges when you're a woman, right? So I think, again, I was lucky being born in Asia, and during the 1980s to 90s, there was a talent drain in oil and gas. So a lot of women were being recruited into oil and gas. So I was lucky during that time to be on board an offshore oil field. I think the biggest challenge I had was navigating my own personal biases about a female role, potentially in C-suite, in the boardroom. Like, can it be done? Is it because I never grew up with that? We still don't grow up with that. We only have 20-30% of women globally on boardrooms, and Fortune 500, Fortune 50. Good luck with that.
Mm-hmm.
So even though I grew up in societies where there was already female presidents all over the world, right? I mean, Pakistan already had it, prime ministers were female. India already had them. So it wasn't like Margaret Thatcher. So it wasn't like we didn't have good female leadership roles. We knew that we could become anything we want. But there was the personal biases that you end up believing in when you get the message through some sort of a performance process that you're not good enough, so we're not going to give you the rating. When all they're doing is putting you in a band so they can afford the budget within the finance to give performance bonuses. So I think that was the only big challenge. And the other challenge I faced as a female was that we don't really like to toot our own horns.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a challenge which keeps you behind, I think. And so I had to navigate that. And I have to say, like, only in the last 3 years, I started feeling comfortable about putting, LinkedIn, like I went to an event and I put my picture out there and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so into myself. I feel like an egomaniac. I still have to not worry about those things and say, I got to do it. I got to be out there. So, we got to toot our own horns. We got to praise other. And the other thing, I think we don't praise other women enough. Like now I do that constantly on LinkedIn. I like my female business ladies and powerful ladies stuff and articles. They're saying the right stuff. They're saying really valuable stuff. So I write on top. You got to really be there and support other women, I think.
Yeah. I think that's so interesting. I have one of my team members, and she said, I was talking to her not long ago doing coaching, and she said, I would have just taken whatever was offered and been grateful for it 2 or 3 years ago. She's like, but now I feel like I'm worth something and like I deserve it.
Wow.
And I was like, yes, you are. but I think that sense of tooting your own horn, demonstrating that you are worth something, I think that helps other women to see, you know what? It's not bragging. It's just saying that we are worth. Look at what we're worth. That.
Yeah, we are worth it. We're not, we're the opposite of not good enough. We're worth every penny, we're worth every energy. And we deserve the equal pay, or if not more. Also, probably more. Yeah.
And it kind of empowers other women to say, hey, maybe I'm worth something too. Yeah, you are.
Yeah, and I take my hats off to women who raised children, run businesses, run companies, leadership, navigate their career progression, getting promoted. I copped out. I didn't want kids, so it was easier for me, I would say. And so I never decided to have the family route and all that. So it's easier for me to climb the ladder easily without having to worry about raising kids. But I take my hats off because, for me, I don't know how you do that. Anyway, how do you do that? And still raise. Yeah.
I just spoke with someone, and she's like, I can't remember who it was, but she was like, just the exhaustion. That was her thing. She's like, it was just so exhausting. She's like, I was so exhausted. I couldn't, think or do. And you've all been there. And I think it doesn't matter really what your journey is, whether you have kids. A lot of times you've got parents you're taking care of. A lot of times, no one knows what your life looks like except for you. And I think we all face those challenges. It doesn't matter if you have fur babies, sometimes you're facing challenges.
Yeah. Well, my parents is one of the things, right? So my mom, I went home to Singapore for 3 months last December to March. Being in the boardroom helps. Quarterly meetings, sometimes online. And, supported her health journey to be more healthy, and got her cataract surgery. So, I feel like I'm still raising kids, just the reverse, reverse parenting as they grow older. And I have 16 odd godchildren, and they're all grown up, so thank God.
Yeah, I don't even know why you said you don't have kids. That's a lot.
My friends didn't like me. Yeah, my friends were like, you're not getting off the hook.
So, Uma, what is the thing you are most proud of?
I think I'm most proud of making my mom proud. That's at the end of the day. If I had to die tomorrow, the question would be, is she proud? Was her energy, her time, her effort? I mean, she had to work 3 jobs just to put us through school, 3 kids. My dad wasn't the kind of, he was a nice guy, but he was also an alcoholic. So it was such a background that, she had to be the main breadwinner at some points. And he was a main breadwinner at some points. It was confusing back in the days, growing poor. I had it easy by the time I was born. We were middle class, but my brothers did go through kind of a bit more poorer background. But we all came out really resilient. We all became business owners and leaders on our own achievements with a lot of support from society and folks. And so I think the thing that I'm most proud of is giving back to those people. Now my godparents, I go back and visit them and nurture them, give them back. And I'm proud of them, how they've come up too. So yeah, I have nothing else to be proud of except that. And I feel like there's more things I can do, obviously, to save the planet, save the people, whatever needs saving. Everything I do feels like for others than for myself. I live a very simple life. I travel a lot, but the biggest thing that I'm proud of is taking my mom to her vacation by the beach where she's never seen something, going for vacation with my brothers and their families. So that's at the end of the day. And I love, and a shout out to my best friend, Delphina. Yep. She's an amazing lady, gave birth to 3 of my sweetest godkids. Yeah, I'm proud of all of that.
I love that. As a mom, it made me tear up just a little bit when you said you're most proud of making your mom proud. That is just gets my heart. That's really sweet.
I'm surprisingly unteary because I think I'm shutting down my emotions. But yeah, I can end up crying if I talk too much about my mom and my brothers. Trying to be professional here.
I love that.
But yeah, as it's got its moments where I thought, oh my God, if I could give up my life and make her successful, give her what she didn't get, like school and education in the 1940s, it was during the World War. Japan occupied it. We lost everything. My dad was an orphan and in the war, and lost his mom when he was 3, and was. The only picture I have of my grandparents is of him at the 3 years old holding a white piece of cloth of his mom. She's like lying motionless. She's dead in a black and white form at the cemetery where they dumped the body and ran. So I don't even know where they are at.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So to pay homage to the ancestors, many generations of hardship. Yeah. Well, thank you for that. What you just said. I know you're teary-eyed. I'm sure you're thinking about your mom too.
Yeah, my mom's amazing too. I guess moms just are amazing in general, huh?
That's what your daughter's going to say about you too. She's going to say,
let's hope so.
Yeah.
Any advice for a young woman who's just starting down this path that you've already been down and have been so successful at? Is there anything you would tell her?
Yeah. It's never too late to think big. Think far, invest in courses and certification to be a leader. Even if you're just starting off in an admin role, a managerial role, just starting off your career, just think of yourself as a powerhouse of value. There's powerful people and there's valuable people. So make sure you meet those two in between. How are you producing value? Anything that you do has to be valuable to society, to your loved ones, to nature. Think along those terms. So you're not killing yourself making money for the sake of making money.
Oh, yeah. I love that thought. Just that, I always put it, I don't put it as eloquently as you. I talk about how you can't spend your whole life doing something that you hate, but that's the same thing. Like you have to believe in what you're doing. You have to think about how that's going to affect you and your family and your kids and other people's kids and other people's families. I love that, Uma. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. You make me say good things. I love this podcast.
Well, thank you so much for spending some time and just sharing your journey and everything that you've learned. I really have appreciated it. If I've got a listener that wants to kind of get in touch with you and ask you questions, how does she go about reaching out?
I'm always available on LinkedIn. So it's Umadevi Gopaldass. cdi.d. I have my email, uma@leadinglotus.com. So you can call me from that or email me and we can connect from that.
Well, I love it. Thank you. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for doing this and being this awesome mom and a fearless female podcast leader. Thank you.